Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I'm the Grace Strega, and I'm here to give you your daily collective read for today, Wednesday, April 24th, 2024. What do we have coming through in the cards for today? May I please have the first 5 cards in our 5-card spread? Those are too many cards. Can I please have one card? Spirit's got a lot to say. First card we are starting our day off with today is 2 of Wands in its reversal. This is falling a lot in alignment with what we saw yesterday. I need to stress, there was a lot of this moment yesterday we even saw was rising up about utilizing the powers or pathwork of energetic observation in relationality to what you are energetically feeling versus how you are communicating. Because we even saw that a little bit of that Scorpio, the problem with the Scorpionic full moon, I'm going to tell you, is not the fact that there isn't that ability for truth to be revealed. It has to do with making sure that you try to take the poison. You try to take the poison out of the truth. Because the Scorpion energy, all of the signs have their glorifications and their detriments. And what we love about the Scorpionic energy is if you want some truth coming up to the surface, well, great, that's wonderful. Congratulations, you got your boy there. But if you're not careful, if you're not conscientious, it's all about the delivery. The work of the Scorpionic energy is all about working on the delivery of something to make sure that it isn't a place of weaponizing or utilizing the truth in a way that could energetically hurt someone, right? That's a lot of the work that we see for a lot of the Scorpionic energy we often see is navigated through. And we see that even with that, and I stress here, this is why I was saying it was so energetically important not to let yourself get triggered yesterday. Because what have I been describing that has been happening energetically over the last few days, ever since the eclipse came to a conclusion point? You guys thought that if you thought that the energy was going to get less intense, no, we're still in eclipse season. But what was happening is the energy changed, right? And so what we were experiencing was, again, that intensity, that gravity, if you will, the gravitas of the come down from the eclipse, combined, because why not, with the energy of the pullback of the Mercury retrograde. I've been talking about this. It's almost like a bow or almost like a slingshot effect. So it can feel very energetically heavy, especially if you're trying to move forward right now, because the energy almost requires, if you're trying to plan right now, wonderful. If you're coming into introspection, wonderful. If you're getting studious right now, fantastic. If you're going back and looking at something from the past in a different way, exceptional. If you're trying to move forward right now, it's going to feel like you're literally trying to move through molasses because you're trying to move against the energetic current, if you current, if you will. And what we're seeing here is on top of that vibration of the pull down and the intensity, we've got that full moon, that pink full moon in Scorpio coming in, and that little harmless sting that if that heightened sensitivity point that could, leave to what could create moments that if we're not intentional with what we say, if we're not clear with articulating, leaves rife opportunities for miscommunications, misfirings, if you will, the intentionality, being lost in terms of moving something energetically forward right now. If you are moving through this right now in a state of being able to ground, if you're being able to let yourself be intentional, if you're letting yourself just feel it and just kind of, again, let it focus, help you focus on what you're trying to do, that could be a moment that even now it feels like there's stillness, but there's a lot of energetic clarity that's coming in that stillness. Masculine and feminine energy in the divine union frequency, this has a lot to do, again, potentially, and what do we see is happening right now? It's having masculine and feminine energy in the heart of the divine union frequency right now. This is that work that even in the heart of the divine union frequency, there may be a lot of energy here that feels like it is either coming into the capacity of energetic reconciliation or readjustment, or effectively almost like a little bit of quietude here, because there's a moment that we're seeing even now. What did I tell you is happening? This is a type of energy that feels like it amplifies that feeling of patience and focus. And a lot of the energy right now in the heart of the divine union frequency is doing a lot of work trying to deconstruct and look at one's own abandonment wounds to ask the bigger question, which is, again, Now, while we see that the energy coming into the divine union right now is discovering abandonment wounds, having a little bit of like putting boundaries up, being extra sensitive, the energy right now in the heart of the divine union frequency right now is utilizing this path work to energetically explore those sensitive areas. Right? I told you, it's like putting on their like spelunking hat and being like, we're going into the cave. We're going into the cave. Because that's that moment that we see that for the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency. Utilizing, and again, I know everybody wants to talk smack on Mercury retrograde periods, but they're beautiful in the sense that if there's one thing that the Mercury retrograde is here to do, is helping you recognize the difference between a groove and a rut. The only difference between a groove and a rut is a groove is something that you do over and over and over again because you know it's moving you in the direction that you want it to go. You feel that sense of positivity. You feel that vibration of moving towards that target, right? A rut is that moment that you get caught doing the same thing again and again and again, but it's not giving you that same, it's not moving you in that same way. You're just kind of getting caught in that space or place of repetition. So we see even now that for a lot of the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency, being able to observe, being able to recognize what feels like it is energetically serving that purpose, what feels like is something that you're doing on repeat right now, that's allowing that moment of saying, like, those are those moments of saying, this is good, this is necessary, this is something that we want to energetically keep doing. We can see the fact that there's that productivity there. We see that path of progress. Versus those places and spaces of saying, I've noticed and recognized a cycle here that feels like it's not leading to energetic improvement. I feel like it's not creating that moment of energetic expansion. You can see how difficult, how that can be a moment that can be the amplification of something that feels like it allows for deepened productivity, right? Versus those moments that almost require hard conversations and saying, I don't know if this is necessarily energetically serving us in the same way, right? So even now we see that this is happening both on the internal level for a lot of the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency. Or it's happening very practically. This could be a lot of looking at like how you're doing things, what your own day-to-day practices are, what your own habits are. Right? And at the same time, the energy in the divine union, it feels like these are sensitive conversations. I feel it. It's like a little bit, I told you, it's that scorpionic energy. What happens when we start to walk towards abandonment wounds? We feel like we have to walk very delicately because that's that moment of almost trying to show something to someone else in a way that you don't feel like you want to set off that energetic trigger. Right? So we see even now that this could be a lot of delicacy that's happening right now around sensitive, like a lot of work in sensitive areas. But what is the energy in the divine union frequency doing in sensitive areas? They are playing it. They are working through it. They're doing that work delicately, right? They're putting that care, that softness, right, into that, because that's that moment that feels like the energetic act of compassion that requires us, again, what do we do in that vibration of love? We navigate something delicately. We navigate something gently for the sake and compassion of the energy that we are moving with. So we see even now that a lot of this energy right now, it feels very sensitive. It feels very like vulnerable. But again, it's almost that moment of saying, almost like having that moment of saying to someone, I know that it's sensitive when I touch you here, but still I need to touch you here, right? Like that's that moment that we see that is happening right now in the expression of the energy at the heart of the divine union frequency. Now the energy coming into the divine union frequency right now, this is the opposite to a certain extent. Because this is not energy that's like, oh, should I touch this? Like, no, it's the opposite. Somebody's already touched this. And this is that moment of not knowing that those soft spots are there. These are energies that are moving, deepening enough into connection that they're reaching new levels of intimacy and they're discovering vulnerabilities in the counterpart energy. And that is the opposite, because the energy, I'll stress this, the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency, what happens when we build trust in another? When we build energetic trust in another, we let them touch parts of us that we wouldn't let others touch, right? That is what the energy at the heart of the divine union frequency is doing right now. The energy coming into divine union is learning that act of trust. They're building, they're creating that sense of intimacy and trust together. And that is the amplification of the energy being like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I didn't know that that was a sensitive area. I didn't know. And the energy almost saying to one another, like, again, they're not reacting in that moment. They're navigating it with compassion and being like, I will be more energetically mindful of that. I will be more sensitive. So the energy coming into divine union is approaching those carefully. The energy in the coming into divine union is moving away from them and both of those acts. Do you see how both of those acts are acts of compassion depending on where you are in the frequency? Masculine and feminine energy in separation right now. This is the observation of what someone effectively or energetically did with an abandonment wound. And that is why we see even now that for a lot of the feminine energy, that modality of feeling like putting some kind of energetic distance or being very cautious in terms of moving forward right now. A lot of that feminine energy is almost that moment of feminine recognizing and identifying, potentially even looking back at past experiences and feeling like they had some kind of abandonment wound, but they don't feel like someone held it preciously, right? What happens in those moments that we feel that we showed that side to someone, we gave someone that level or degree of intimacy, but we feel like they weren't energetically sensitive with it. We feel like they didn't come into that space of protecting. It can make us feel very frustrated. It can make us feel very guarded because it's not the moment of feeling that sense of not being vulnerable, but feeling like that vulnerability wasn't energetically cherished or protected. So we see even now that this is the feminine energy that is moving forward in this pathwork of separation, almost reaffirming to themselves that in those moments it was not energetically wrong for the feminine to come into that state or space of being energetically vulnerable. That is that vulnerability is the heart of the divine union connection. But rather, what is the feminine energy doing right now that is the lesson that they're taking with them? Being very present, being very energetically mindful, being very sensitive of how someone around them energetically reacts when they experience or give them something that they tell them that they are energetically sensitive with. Because that is almost that moment of the feminine recognizing and identifying that those moments that we say to someone, I have this, like, this is something that is difficult for me. The way that someone carries it, what they do with that when we say that to someone, that's almost a feminine saying, my solution isn't to energetically harden my heart. My solution is not to become less sensitive. My solution is to be more energetically mindful of how the energy navigates when I show them something and I say, this is very important, this is very fragile. This is something I carry that is very fragile and delicate. Because that's that moment of feminine, again, recognizing that is that small gift of intimacy that you give to someone that can inform you on how you can expect them to navigate with something careful that you give them, that you cherish. While for masculine energy right now, this could be one of those modalities where, and again, you may be feeling like you're going through this pathwork, especially if you feel to a certain extent masculine, if you are in separation right now, wherein you feel like someone gave you something energetically precious and you didn't prioritize its value. You may be recognizing and understanding what some kind of energetic rift is between you and another energetic energy. Right? A lot of this path work for the masculine, and this is what is hard about this, because having that moment of energetic recovery can be so, it can almost feel like that impossible hurdle. Because what effectively energetically occurs when you already have reached a moment where you feel like someone gave you something that was incredibly energetically precious to them, and you feel like you didn't prioritize it or you feel like you lost it. It's almost that moment that you do feel like, in a way, like what you had can't be energetically regained, because even if you're trying to build that point of intimacy back, it's almost like the energy itself has lost the trust and capacity in feeling like you can be energetically trusted with that moment of energetic intimacy. So we see even now, this is either masculine energy that's trying to articulate this to a feminine, trying to like amplify this. Because I almost see the fact that for some of the masculine energy, there's like no words. I can literally see someone being like, I don't know what to say, because this is such. I'll put it this way: it's such a complicated feeling. I'm doing my best to describe it. I hope I'm describing it the best way. And it's almost that moment, I'll put it this way. There could be a lot of conversations that are happening with someone right now, like, or conversations where it's like feeling like that energetic spark is like gone, because it's that moment of like the feminine energy holding back, so closed off from the masculine. And the masculine energy almost saying like, I recognize I lost your energetic trust. I recognize that you gave me something, but you gave it to me long ago and I lost it along the way. And this is almost either masculine energy that's trying to articulate to the feminine and saying, I recognize and realize that I lost the thing that you gave me that was precious. Or this is masculine energy that's trying to find a way to like come into that space of like taking some kind of energetic accountability here in separation. So we see even now like a lot of this energetic contemplation that's happening across masculine and feminine, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Second card in our 5-card spread for today is, I'm not surprised to see this. Like we've got here, this is like a lot of 9. This is 9 of Wands with our 2 of Wands in its reversal. So just a lot of that energy of kind of like, I just keep hearing like over and over, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. Masculine energy and separation. This is like, I can see that there's a lot of this masculine energy in separation that, you know, it does feel like there's something here that like a lot of the masculine energy in separation is trying to like work through, to the extent of feeling like this is a lot of masculine energy saying, I want to say something, but I'm energetically afraid to say something. I want to say something, but I'm energetically afraid to say something. Like a lot of this going back and forth. But again, I will stress, this is kind of okay with this type of energetic signature to a certain extent, because what we're seeing, and you have to bear this in mind, is that a lot of the energy in separation, putting that level or degree of intentionality towards things right now, is that path of purpose, right? And when we are intentional with how we want to move forward with something, there are moments or spaces where we put a lot of care and consideration into something, specifically for the sake, and we see even now that this is either masculine energy, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, that is trying to move into a space or place of not wanting to be energetically misunderstood, either not wanting to be energetically misunderstood by the feminine energy, or feels like they are trying to come into a state or space of energetic accountability on, but it's so I'll put it this way. I'll put it this way. This is why it's so, I can already see why this is so energetically hard. Masculine energy, if masculine energy is feeling energetically guilty, if you're looking back at your past version of self and you're feeling energetically guilty, it can be really hard to want to be in that state or space of being able to articulate and amplify that. Because that's almost that moment that you feel like, in a way, like you're condemning your present self by being able to articulate so much on like what that behavior was. You know what I mean? Like it's almost that moment of the masculine being like, I wish I could apologize without actually saying what I'm sorry for. Because that's that moment of the masculine almost being like, I don't want to like speak it into being by even recognizing and identifying just like how much of a pathwork of accommodation it requires. You know what I mean? So I see like this is like this is like a lot of like, yeah, like, you know what, like that's the thing. Apologies are like, this is masculine energy being like, an apology is like, this is masculine saying, well, apology is a condemnation and I don't want to like condemn myself. But I also see the fact that like, you know, again, energy that's operating in a place of intentionality, like that is the pathwork of, again, vulnerability. So this is a lot of masculine energy working through the vulnerability that's energetically required in order to heal, in order to forgive, right? It starts with being able to take accountability on the past version of self. And that starts with being able to be vulnerable enough to be able to admit those spaces and places wherein you wish you could do energetically better, right? It comes from those moments of saying, I am not perfect, in that observational point, and recognizing and understanding and saying like, that is something that none of us are. So masculine energy, again, if you're going through this right now, you know, I think that even there, being conscientious and considerate about that is going to kind of help, particularly if you're trying to determine like the best way to proceed forward in relationality to new energetic partnerships, or if this is some kind of pathwork of reconciliation and healing that you're aspiring and desiring to proceed upon. While for feminine energy right now in separation, this is the feminine energy. I want to say this is like feminine energy that almost like intuitively feels this is the case, but I'm going to say it again. This is feminine energy that's holding firm to the fact. What did I say that a lot of the feminine energy is doing right now? If something is happening energetically, if feminine feels energetically that something is happening, that's the feminine energy that again is reaffirming to themselves that it doesn't, like to a certain extent, as much as the feminine energy could feel that energetic connection to a certain extent, it doesn't necessarily matter. Because that's the feminine energy saying, regardless of whether the feminine can have this intuitive connection as to like the deeper implications of something, this is feminine energy saying if the masculine energy doesn't have the ability to bring something into being, then you know what? It's only one word. It's potential. Something that exists in the ether, that is not brought into like the terra firma. It is one thing, potential. And that's the feminine energy going, yeah, that's potentially what's happening here. And that's the feminine energy, like the focus word of today is potential. Yeah, that's potentially. Feminine is like looking at their own intuition and saying, that's potentially what's happening. Potentially the other's happening too. Potentially there's a lot of things happening. Something that is not made material is always existing in the realm of potentiality. So even for the feminine, it said, the feminine can say, I can conjecture as to what that is, but until someone brings it forth in such a way, I need to assume that it is just that. It is a potentiality. It is a facet of something. And so that's why we see even now that that's a feminine saying, reaffirming their own sense of energetic commitment. And they're reaffirming and saying, I am moving forward towards a masculine energy that is conquering their own energetic fears in terms of being able to articulate what the reality of circumstances and situations are. Masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union. This is the gift that you guys give each other. Because you don't make that, look how easy it is when you don't create that space that someone has to assume. These are energies that have learned that building a place of assumption, making an energy feel like they have to mind read to understand what's going on with you, is a place that just makes everyone extremely energetically triggered. So we see even now that we have a lot of this energy coming into divine union right now that is effectively appreciating and saying to one another, you make something energetically easy because I never have to guess what is energetically going on with you, right? That is literally the energy almost saying and reaffirming and being like, thank you. If this is like a place, like this is almost the energy saying as they're coming into divine union, I'm sorry, I've got this like real unreasonable reactivity point around something. I notice it within myself. I'm trying to work on it. Someone being like, thank you, you already are. Because that's that moment that, again, the vibration is you don't need to be perfect in order to heal. The way that you heal is that you are always effectively healing. You're always articulating on what that healing is. Being able to do so is what's facilitating that space of someone saying, thank you, because without you telling me, how would I know? And that's the energy. And this is like, do you see the energy in separation is they're saying the same things in different meanings. So what is the energy in separation saying to one another? If you don't tell me, how will I know? What is the energy that's healing saying, thank you, because if you didn't tell me, how would I know? And this is the energy in the heart of the divine union saying, you don't need to tell me. I know. Because this is the energy that knows one another so much in the heart of the divine union frequency that this is the energy saying, I know what that is, but let's proceed forward and continue through even if it is feeling super sensitive. Because you see how like these energies are all going through the same thing but in different ways? Like that is effectively what we see is occurring here. Continuing forward on these cards right now. Third card in our 5-card spread is... High Priestess. We love this. Masculine. Well, I mean, it's going to have a different impact depending on where we find ourselves. So masculine and feminine energy in the heart of the divine union frequency. We see even now that I told you a lot of that path work of introspection, a lot of that path work of doing, like I told you, what has the feminine energy been doing over the last few weeks. Location, location, location. If there's been something that has become an energetic disturbance, if there's been something that is creating that sense of offness, right? I told you, this is why the feminine energy has been focusing so much for a lot of this eclipse cycle. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, because it's all that pathwork of introspection, of the feminine being able to really identify and put their finger on what they feel they need to adjust or modify or change, that point of energy, of insight. This is feminine energy in the heart of the divine union frequency that isn't moving in that modality of saying to a certain extent, like, I feel something, right? Because that's not useful. Being able to say, like, I feel something isn't helpful, because you can feel all sorts of things, right? Being able to be in that space or place of not subjecting another to one's emotions, but building that energetic bridge through them. We see that a lot of the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency has been doing this work. And for feminine specifically, what we're recognizing and identifying is this is feminine energy that, again, has done enough energetic work on the self. And again, in a way, the divine union itself has created enough of a space, of a place of energetic safety to a certain extent, that the feminine energy feels like they can go into that introspection mode of really identifying and recognizing the locationality of what they feel is that moment of energetic disturbance. And that is that feeling to a certain extent of the feminine recognizing. Remember how I said, like, what is the pathwork for so much of this feminine right now? Is discerning and saying, this is something inside of me. This is something I've been working on since before I came into the divine union frequency. This is something that I've been carrying with me a while. This is a boundary that I need to convert into a standard, right? If I'm feeling triggered, then that's a boundary that I need to convert into a standard, because we move a boundary into a standard, we remove the trigger, right? And so we see even now that that's a lot of the feminine energy in the divine union frequency, trying to unpack and articulate that, to identify the difference between what feels like it is, again, something that the feminine needs to adjust and accommodate in terms of the manifestation goals going forward, or something that they're working on energetically unpacking and dismantling in the self, so that they can build a sense of energetic easement as they move towards their manifestation goals. Masculine energy, seeing this on the part of the feminine, feels like an energetic relief, because this is the vibration of a masculine saying, I love this. I love being in divine union with you, because I never have to energetically guess what you're feeling. And I don't feel like we're just moving in the realm of your energetic emotions. You're able to articulate upon them. You're able to express them. You're able to, like, navigate through and provide that sense of clarity, because you're doing that work from within. So we see even now that a lot of this energy in the heart of the divine union frequency, and this is masculine not only feeling the easement of a feminine that does that, but masculine taking a chapter from their book. Right? This is the masculine almost saying, like, I want to do that too. Like, you've inspired me to do that as well, right? This is the energy. Like I told you, okay, I'll put it this way. Remember I said a few weeks ago that feminine was like, you can't borrow my homework? Well, when you're in the divine union frequency, you can borrow each other's homework, because you know that you're doing the work together. You're doing the work together. Masculine and feminine energy that's coming into the divine union frequency, this is the same exact vibration. This is the masculine almost saying to the feminine, especially if these are moments where, again, there's triggers. Like, these are energies. They're getting closer together. They're bumping elbows. They're hitting places. But are these energies subjecting each other to their emotions and reacting? No. They're articulating. And what's happening? The masculine is articulating to the feminine, potentially even the way the feminine has taught the masculine at this point to articulate upon their feelings. And feminine has the resiliency not to take something energetically personally. If that's a masculine saying, like, this is a sore subject with me. And this is almost a masculine. We can almost see here, like, this is feminine being like, do you want to talk about it? Masculine's like, no. And feminine's like, that's cool. Because that's the feminine that realizes, again, like, feminine's like, I would love to talk. Like, that's all I want to talk about. Feminine's like, when I hit those moments, I'm like, that's all I want to do. But feminine's like, that's okay. The ability for both of these energies to respect one another's boundaries. And for some of, I need to stress, for some of the energy right now coming into divine union, this is feminine energy having the sensitivity of being like, masculine being like, that's a sore subject for me. And feminine being like, do you want to talk about it? Masculine's like, actually, no. And feminine's like, okay. Like, that ability of the feminine to even, like, let something energetically be, because the moment of recognizing and feeling like you're respecting the masculine's own boundaries, because you can violate someone's energetic boundaries if they say, I don't feel comfortable talking about something, and the feminine goes, okay, noted. I will step back. That is that moment that these energies are moving into that space of energetically respecting one another. Well, for masculine, that's that moment of, again, feminine being able to articulate what those boundaries are. These are energies that even when there's triggers that are hit, they don't create conflict points because they're just that moment of showing the compassion by being energetically sensitive, right? Masculine and feminine energy in separation. This is that modality that we see right now that is so frustrating, because that same message that I saw right now that's coming through across all of the frequencies, that moment of saying, thank you for telling me, even if it's something that's hard to discuss. The energy in separation is saying the exact same thing, which is like, even if it's hard to discuss, you should still tell me. That's the feminine energy almost reaffirming that commitment and being like, yeah, you know what? Maybe it's hard for them to talk about it. That's a feminine almost coming into that point of immediate closure on something, especially if this is feminine looking at a situation or circumstance of separation and being like, I think I know exactly what's going on here. But they don't want to tell me. And the feminine goes, I can't control that. It's not my responsibility to pull someone out to make them talk about something that they're too afraid to talk about, or that they don't feel the confidence to do so. The feminine's like, it doesn't matter if that's the case, because the feminine's like, that is saying that there is a potentiality there. Tremendous potentiality, but no ability to bring it into reality. No ability to bring it into reality. And that's the feminine energy almost saying, I recognize that I can see the potential in partnerships around me all the time. I can see things beyond what other people can see. I can see the highest version of masculine all the time. But all I see is energetic potential until the masculine is ready to bring it out within themselves. And that's the feminine energy, building that sense of, again, falling in alignment with their highest version of self. Because that's what the feminine energy is effectively energetically trying to do by taking, what did I tell you, the same work, taking those boundaries and turning them into energetic standards. While for masculine right now, this is a moment that you may be feeling, again, a lot of the masculine on the healing journey right now, you may be feeling, I'm going to say it, like there's some kind of energy right now of masculine. And listen, masculine energy and separation, now is not a time, I need to express this. Now is not a time to feel energetically intimidated, as it were. Because we see even now that a lot of the masculine energy and separation right now, doing that intense path work, in recognizing and identifying one's own vulnerabilities, that is that moment that we see even now. It feels like, again, a lot of the masculine energy is on a healing journey right now, specifically towards, I want to say, their divine feminine energy. Whether this is a divine feminine energy that you're ascribing to some kind of past circumstance or situation, or if this is some kind of energy in terms of who you're trying to manifest, this is that moment that we see that feels like a little bit of that, breaking out of one's own shell, because that's that moment of saying, I almost feel like a lot of the masculine energy and separation saying, I'm a little energetically afraid to do something, but for them, I will. And what's beautiful about that is, I see that some of the masculine energy is looking back in the past and doing that, and some of the masculine energy, you're just manifesting that, ideal aspiration of who that divine feminine is that you're hoping to find as you proceed forward down this path. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now, fourth card in our 5-card spread for today is, oh boy, big cards today. This is some serious energy. Jeez. This is big decisions. Big decisions, beautiful decisions though, because what we're effectively seeing right now that I think is really important to note is that even in separation, this is some really, really impactful stuff. Because for feminine energy, this is a reaffirmation and recommitment to the aspiration and manifestation of moving towards one's own highest version of self, in whatever context that is, right? That's a lot of the feminine energy just holding themselves. And again, this is feminine energy coming into a space of energetic healing. I told you, a lot of the feminine energy is almost saying to themselves, how do I release the bitterness of the past? How do I take these places that I feel anger and fear from past experiences? Feminine energy saying, I'm transforming them into standards. I'm transforming them into standards. I'm transforming them into standards in terms of what my highest self would want me to do. And that ability to do so, even now, that is the feminine energy that feels like, again, they're looking at, and if the feminine energy is looking back at the past right now and feeling that frustration, feeling that anger, this is feminine going, I wasn't in my highest self back then. I see things in a different, this is feminine even saying, I see things in a different place right now because I've got a different perspective on it. Feminine's like, I'm looking at it from a higher perspective, my highest version of self. And that's the feminine energy saying, I'm not going to hold on to the past because that would me being limiting myself, like trying to see things from the perception of that past version of self. That's limiting my perception. This is feminine saying, I'm going to see things from up here. And that means I'm going to be able to release it, because that means I'm like, why am I going to crouch down and look at things down here when I can just release it and look up from up here? Like the giraffe sticking their head up, While for masculine and feminine, a masculine energy in separation right now, a lot of that masculine energy in separation, this is that moment that we see, and this is really beautiful. For the masculine energy in separation, we see that a lot of the masculine energy in separation right now is doing that same work. But what's beautiful about this is, again, you're utilizing, and I think that this is perfectly good, because this is a lot of masculine energy healing their connection with feminine. This is the masculine energy. And I have to say this isn't, I'll put it this way, masculine energy. This isn't masculine energy. I'll put it this way. This isn't masculine energy trying to do things to please the feminine. Don't misinterpret what we're seeing here. This is not masculine energy trying to do something to say what will please the feminine energy. This is masculine energy envisioning the ideal counterpart, right? The highest version of divine feminine, what their aspiration is, what that feminine energy connected to, and then saying, I want to rise to the challenge. I want to meet that energy where I see them. I want to be in that same space, right? And that's that masculine energy that's going on that energetic journey, not to create that false sense of self here. You see that difference? This isn't coming into a place of trying to impress the feminine energy. This is masculine saying, I want to do that for myself too. I want to go on that same journey. I want to see things from that energetic perspective. And the only way I can see things from that energetic perspective is if I go through that journey for myself, right? That is that moment of the masculine. If like the feminine energy is like the giraffe looking above, that's a masculine energy that's not trying to like climb up the tree to get the feminine's attention. That's a masculine saying, I want to climb that tree too. I want to be there too. I want to share that view, right? And that's why we see that this energy, like that is the beauty of that healing journey. It's not that moment of creating that world of illusion with one another. It's being able to perceive and see things together. The energy right now that's coming into divine union, that is what you're doing with one another right now. And that's why we see that amplification point of looking at something and saying, it's not that things are different. When you're coming into divine union, it's not that anything is different. But it's amazing what the point of view of the counterpart will do to changing a position. It's amazing when you go through the same things that you've gone through in the past. What the right perspective or the right energetic counterpart is, being able to maintain that same moment. And what are these energies that are coming into divine union doing? Even if there's moments that you're bumping elbows and you're having those moments of awkwardness, you're nipping it in the bud. And that's the masculine saying to the feminine, if that happened and feminine said, this is a sensitive subject to me, please handle with care. Masculine saying, thank you. And if that's something that the masculine said, oh, wait, what did you teach me to do? Oh, this is a sensitive subject with me. I sometimes get triggered. Feminine's going, okay, cool. And this is masculine almost saying to the feminine in coming into divine union, my gift, the gift that you give me is that it is so energetically easy. It's not that things have changed. It is that the way we navigate things has changed. It is the way that we commit to affirming how we choose to navigate things. That is the energetic commitment. Right? Because that's that moment that makes the difference between what feels like, what is the difference between an argument and a conflict? A conflict are two people that want different things and pull against one another to get what they want. An argument are energies that want the same thing. They just got different ways of going about it. Right? Masculine and feminine energy, that sensitivity, that ability of taking that like no touchy area. That's the opposite that's happening here for the energy in the divine union frequency, because the energy in the divine union frequency, I told you, that's energy that's very aware of those sensitivity points. almost having those moments right now, really utilizing and amplifying the retrograde gift, which is looking at something and saying basically like Mercury retrograde wants us to say one thing and one thing only, which is that groove you're in. Is it a groove or is it a rut? Prove it. Is it a groove or is it a rut? Or maybe I'm going to show you a better way to do your groove, because that's that moment that, like, you rattle the box and then you see if things start moving back in the position again, right? And what we see that's happening that feels like, again, sensitive conversations between masculine and feminine energy right now in the divine union is that moment of sensitivity of being like, I know you so well. I just want to ask you, is this a groove or is this a rut? Because I can see that highest version of self. And that's what's so sensitive, because those moments that we show compassion are moments that we have hard conversations with sometimes related to saying, like, I want you to make sure that you're on that pathwork of coming into that highest version of self. And what else would the energy in the divine union do than be able to talk about something sensitive, to have that sensitive work for the sake of helping maintain that frequency of moving towards that aspiration and that goal. So we see a lot of conversations right now for energy in the divine union frequency, talking about manifestation goals, talking about what you identify that may be something that someone is holding that feels like it is blocking or limiting them from being either able to move towards the manifestation goal that you have with the counterpart, or something that you're seeing that may be a preventative, something that's preventing them, like someone personally, from being able to like move forward in that way. Fifth card in our 5-card spread for today is, and that's beautiful, because that ability of doing so is where we see the moment that grief is released. Right? That is that moment that allows for that sense of energetic easement, as it were. Masculine and feminine energy in the divine union frequency. This is feeling like a lot of energetic catharsis coming into play, especially if there's been anything that has been feeling very energetically difficult. Because what happens when you have those hard conversations? What happens when you don't turn that energetic blind eye to something, but you address something? Like I told you, a lot of this energy is coming through that path work during the eclipse cycle, seeing something that was small being made magnified, like that microscopic thing being amplified, is that moment of energetic discernment that a lot of the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency is almost saying, like, let's navigate problems before they get bigger. Let's take that small thing and address it. And so we see even now that a lot of that energy is doing that type of work right now. And while it may be hard, these are potentially hard conversations, they do feel like they're allowing that sense of energetic easement and catharsis. Because being able to face something that's energetically difficult and find that pathway through, that is what allows for that sense of easement. Right? That's that moment of taking anything that's negative and making it a positive. While for the energy right now, and a lot of that is that moment for the energy in the divine union of, like, again, touching the sensitive area. That place of being like, that no touchy zone, I think we do need to touch it a little bit, right? Because that's that moment of saying, like, is that abandonment wound something that's serving, or is it something that's limiting, right? Masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union right now, it's the opposite. That's that opposite, because you're building energetic trust with one another. You're building that sense of conscientiousness. So that's the opposite. That's a moment that when someone says, this is a little sensitive to me. When someone says, this is a little sensitive to me, that's not the time to say to someone, oh, I should just, you mean like right here, right? Like, that's the moment that you say, oh, okay, like, I understand. And so even now, the mindfulness that is experienced here with the energy, showing the ability to say, I will take that with me going forward. You have nothing to fear. That is that moment that feels like time will tell, but it is that mindfulness, that energetic sensitivity, if you will, that is amplifying the sense of building the trust that is someday necessary. That's why the energy that's in the heart of the divine union can touch those spaces, because they're doing it delicately, right? Masculine and feminine energy in separation right now. This is the energy of the feminine setting those standards and almost feeling to that moment of saying to themselves, this could be a lot of feminine energy unpacking and being like, looking at something and being like, that was the moment. That was the moment I recognized that I gave something to someone that was very delicate. And I saw that they dropped it. I saw that they didn't care about it. I saw that they kind of threw it on the ground. This could be a lot of that feminine energy in separation, being like, I can almost, like, I see a lot of the feminine almost going like, I can identify the exact moment that something gave me that point of clarity. And even that moment, feminine energy is almost holding on to that moment right now to reaffirm their own commitment to path work in relationality to as they move forward from this point. Because that's a moment of feminine, almost like, I feel like I can almost see a lot of feminine energies, like saying to masculine right now, like, the moment that the trust was gone. This was that moment. This was that moment that I saw something and I recognized that was that moment that I feel like some kind of energetic trust was gone. And that's that moment that, again, I told you, for a lot of the feminine energy, it's like location, location, location. Feminine energy being able to place that moment in the past and saying, you know what, that was the moment I realized. Like, that's almost the feminine energy hearing their higher self saying, you knew at that. Like, that's almost, I can almost hear feminine energy saying, you knew at that moment, didn't you? You knew at that moment that your path work was misaligned. You knew at that moment when you saw them do that, when you saw them not take that the way that you expected, when they said something, when they knew it was sensitive, when you asked them something and they refused to answer. This is like a lot of the feminine energy being like, there it is. That was that moment. And feminine is almost holding that. Like, that's feminine actually taking that. Remember when I said feminine is going through that process of saying, like, what do I need to let go of? I'm going to let go of the bitterness. What am I going to hold on to? This is feminine being like, I can't let go of this. I can't let go of that. I have to hold on to that, because that was the moment I realized that wisdom was delivered and I didn't let myself energetically see it. So that's a lot of the feminine energy saying, I still need that clarification point on what that was, because that's the feminine almost saying, if I can't get that clarification point, then that's the feminine energy saying that was that moment that amplifies why I'm setting those energetic standards. And a lot of that potentially has to do with those moments in the past where feminine said, it was the unanswered question. It was when the math wasn't mathing. It was that moment that I asked for something and didn't receive it. That's the feminine energy, finding that kernel of energetic wisdom, finding that diamond and saying, I need to take that with me going forward. And that's the feminine leaving the bitterness behind and just taking the wisdom from a circumstance and situation. Masculine energy in separation right now. This is masculine energy. If in separation, going through that energetic process of potentially recognizing and realizing that the feminine, like in that way, there's that moment we see even now that this is masculine energy going through that same process and potentially looking at that moment and almost looking back at circumstances and situations. And I feel like it's the same exact thing, except some of the masculine energy, if you're looking back and you're prioritizing some kind of energetic connection in the past, you're looking back on something and saying, that was the moment I energetically lost them. That was this, like, I can almost see masculine separation, looking back at past experience and being like, that was the moment. That was that moment. I can see the moment that I lost them. I can see that moment that trust fled from their eyes. I can see that moment where they felt like they could not be open with me. Like, that's almost the masculine energy, like saying, I can see the moment that the feminine energy, like, closed that door. And so now this is either the masculine energy that is going through that process of energetically wanting to recover something from a feminine that they feel like they had that moment of losing that energetic trust with. Or this is masculine energy, like by reaffirming their own energetic commitment to change, because that's not something that you can go towards someone and say, I'm sorry I did that. That's something that you have to say to someone, I can prove to you that I would never do that again. Right? And that's a lot of the masculine energy going on that journey to be able to find a way to energetically prove that towards feminine. Or that is masculine energy that is taking that energetic lesson and changing one's own behavior and saying, I will never do that to feminine energy again. Like, that is that moment of, again, that path work in identifying and recognizing what we need to change that allows us that point of energetic growth that we identify as wisdom instead of holding on to regret. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our 2 of Wands in its reversal and our 9 of Wands. One card to clarify. Clarification coming through right now. This is a breakthrough. I have to say, this is some heavy energetic work, but again, this is allowing for a lot of energetic breakthroughs, masculine and feminine energy. In separation, even now, feminine energy, being able to look at something and turning a boundary into an energetic standard, that is now the success point, because that's the feminine energy that's feeling that moment of empowerment, not moving forward from a place of fear, but almost just feeling that moment of feeling empowered to go forward on their journey, because that's the feminine energy saying, like, I'm feeling like the celebration moment potentially and saying like, I can overcome the hurdle. I'm not moving forward from a place of anxiety. I'm utilizing this to reaffirm my own value and standards. So for a lot of the feminine energy, that is that moment that feels like an energetic breakthrough. While for masculine, your own ability of seeing and recognizing and feeling that sense of energetic accountability, almost seeing what you did in the past that may have created that moment of feminine, putting that wall up between you and them, creating that energetic boundary. Because what happens when the feminine suddenly loses energetic trust for the masculine? Feminine energy doesn't become a clear mirror. Feminine energy stops showing the masculine their highest version of self. Feminine just becomes a reflecting shield. Feminine just shows masculine what they're receiving, right? Masculine realizes that the feminine energy, there's depths to their mirror. That's the feminine energy that when they feel that heart of intimacy, they'll show you your truest version of self. If you show that, if you wound the feminine, feminine will only show you what you're showing them. They will show you exactly what you see on the outside. You will stop existing as what they see within you, and they will just show you what you are showing them. So we see even now that for a lot of the masculine energy, understanding and recognizing that, almost seeing the turn, being like, I can remember the moment that she stopped looking at me in that way that she saw me from a place of aspiration for my potential. And she saw me instead for who I was giving her. That is that moment of masculine saying, I need to aspire to be who I knew that she thought I could become. Right? That is that moment of masculine coming into your own journey. And that's that one of, again, feeling that sense of being like, I remember when they stopped looking at me like that. I remember when I stopped being like what they thought I was, and instead I just became the thing that I was showing them. And so we see that for a lot of the masculine energy, that modality is building that sense of purpose of saying, I want to become what they thought I was. I want to aspire to become that. Because that's that moment of masculine, almost feeling to a certain extent, some of the masculine energy being like, I saw my highest version of self through their eyes, right? So for a lot of the masculine, that is helping. Even those memories is helping you find your own journey of the self in terms of understanding like what it is that you're aspiring and desiring for going forward. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Nine of Wands in combination. While for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union right now, this energetic equivalent, this is what you give one another. This ability of when the trigger gets hit, you don't need to close yourself off to the other, because that's that moment that you don't feel like you need to protect each other from one another. It's that moment of someone saying, I see that I struck a nerve. I see that I accidentally struck a chord. I won't energetically do that again. I will be very mindful of that. It's not that those moments don't happen, but someone being able to say, I'm going to be very precious with that. I'm going to cherish that. That is the energy that is building into the heart of trust at the same exact moments. And it can feel triggering because some of those moments were built on those points where someone felt like that energetic door closed. Like that was the moment that they said, I had to stop trusting at that moment. So what's happening for the energy coming into divine union? Someone just rubbed shoulders with the place of someone being like, that was the moment everything changed. That was the moment everything changed. Like that is that moment of someone rubbing against someone and being like, what was that? And being like, that was the moment everything changed. So even now, like that's that moment of someone saying, I'm going to build that sense of trust to show you. Like they're not saying I'm going to touch that, but they're like, we're going to return to that, right? Like we're going to return to that someday, because that's that moment of saying there's something deeper there that you're not ready to touch. You're not ready to see. While for masculine and feminine, what's happening in the divine union? You know that place, that place that you're, I think we should touch it. I think we should just, that's what's so hard about this, because that's that moment that even now being able to have that sensitivity point, that's what's allowing for the energetic breakthrough, because that is where the healing needs to go. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Two of Wands in combination with our High Priestess. Two of Wands in its reversal in combination with our High Priestess. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our King of Cups in its reversal. This is energetically or emotionally overwhelming right now. For masculine, I have to stress there's a lot of emotionality coming to bear today. And I need to stress one's own ability to make sure that you are not subjecting another to one's emotions, but coming into a space of being able to articulate upon them is a continual work in progress. And I see even now, there has to be a little bit of sensitivity in relationality to the fact that I told you these energies are still in very different spaces and places in relationality to how you're navigating this particular energetic feeling. Masculine and feminine. Feminine, I keep seeing this all week. Feminine is all about that introspection mode. Feminine's like, let's go to the library with the magnifying glass. Like feminine energy is just like, I'm going into like let's do this. Like feminine really is in that moment of energetic introspection. Like feminine energy is feeling like there's this point of like just feeling a lot of that energetic value right now. This is a lot more difficult for masculine feminine. You just got to listen. I'm going to say this again. When we want to have difficult conversations and things, consent is energetically key. Consent does not just exist in the realm of the tangible. Consent exists in the realm of the emotional as well. So we see even now that the mindfulness of being able to navigate circumstances and situations right now, it needs to start with feeling like that moment of almost saying, like, when is the best time to have an energetic conversation? When would be like, when is energetically appropriate? Because a lot of this has to do with timing. I keep seeing a lot of timing mishaps right now happening with this retrograde period. So we see even now, this could be a moment that there's a lot of potential frustrations that have been happening recently about the fact that feminine has wanted to build into this point of introspection right now with masculine. And masculine, frankly, just doesn't have the spoons for it right now. Masculine just doesn't have the emotional spoons for this right now because it's too, I want to say to a certain extent, there's something here that's too energetically triggering. It's too energetically emotional. And I have to stress here that sometimes masculine processes their emotionality in ways that aren't just verbal, right? More than words sometimes, often with masculine, because there's something even here with the energy in the divine union, recognizing and identifying the fact that masculine may have different ways of processing emotionality beyond being able to articulate them. Even now we see that that requires a level and degree of mindfulness and looking at the counterpart energy and saying, what do you need? And do you have the bandwidth to discuss something right now? Right? These are energies that are both invested in doing that work, but they keep having these missteps in relationality to energetic timing. So a lot of this has to do with, again, there may be a lot of hard conversations that are happening right now. And almost saying to someone, now is not the time, now is not the place, especially because masculine is feeling somewhat energetically overwhelmed. Feminine, I told you, this is where we see the potentiality of an energetic trigger. Feminine energy, if this is feminine that feels like masculine is always putting that off, there needs to be like a pin put in something in relationality to a location and time to do something here. Because we see even now that this may be a feminine almost saying, like, if this is this is all about the ratio, about these energies, finding that moment that feels like it is the right time, right? Because for feminine, this is something that the feminine is expanding a lot of patience on, being like, is now the right time? Is now the right time? Masculine's been saying for a lot, no, 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 no. But again, the energy that is in the divine union frequency, the energy of the feminine that feels like the masculine saying not right now, but doesn't feel like that's masculine saying never. Like that is the energy that can build that sense of conciliation, because that's the feminine that feels like they can trust that when the masculine says not right now, they don't mean never. They mean now is not the moment, but I am invested in doing that path work with you, right? So that is how the energy in the divine union manages even some of these timing issues that we see that occur frequently with this Mercury retrograde. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, one of the things that we see about these triggers that are happening is how the energy wants to navigate it. What does the feminine want to do? Masculine, having a moment of the feminine feeling. I'll tell you right now, masculine energy, if you hit these energetic triggers with the feminine right now, there's a moment that there could be a miscommunication here, because masculine's like, oh, I won't talk to you about that. Feminine's like, no, 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 you can talk to me all you want about that. I would love to talk about it. Sit down, grab some coffee. I'll give you a 4-hour treatise on why there's abandonment wound there. It was April 27th. Like, you know what I mean? Like setting the scene. Like feminine's like, I'll get some pictures. I'll make a map. I'll show you a diagram. I'll give you all the reasons as to why that abandonment wound is there. That's feminine's favorite thing, to be like, let's talk about why the abandonment wound's there. And masculine being like, I don't ever want to talk about that. I don't ever want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about it. I don't like talking about it. right? So we see even now, like the way that these energies navigate that, there may be some misunderstandings here, because feminine may feel like, again, if masculine's just like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, you're sensitive about that, feminine's going to potentially feel like masculine doesn't care. So masculine, you may want to say to the feminine, if you're hitting those moments with them, would you like to talk about it? Okay? While for feminine, you may recognize that when you may want to be like, can we talk about it? And masculine says like, no. They're saying no because it's like, and you can even say to the masculine in the moments, okay, I understand that, but if you ever want to, know that I'm energetically available to do so. That is how you can navigate some of these miscommunications here, because these energies are feeling the same thing, but they have different ways of experiencing it. Masculine and feminine energy, right? And what do we do in those moments? We are mindful and respectful of what the energetic compassion point is in terms of how someone needs to energetically carry something, while always leaving the opportunity of that being an accommodation point. Masculine and feminine energy in separation right now. This is the energy, again, of the feminine, feeling the full weight of some energy that they're not in communication with in separation. I'm just going to be that honest. I'm just going to be honest with it. Like that's a lot of the feminine energy doing that past path work, that introspection in relationality to any communication problems with masculine energy. And that's that moment of the feminine potentially feeling that, again, that question mark, in feeling a lot, like feminine almost sensing and feeling a lot of energy from a masculine, not potentially being in communication with them. But that's, again, the feminine energy that almost says to a certain extent, you know, even if I feel the energetic connection here, feminine's like, the feminine's like, I'm not going to chase after that. Because that could be a masculine. If they're not in touch with their own emotionality, they might not even necessarily be energetically aware that they're reaching out in that way. Feminine's like, because that could be the masculine's higher version of self, like reaching out to the feminine that way, and feminine being like, I can't help you, go talk to him. Like, I can't help you, go talk to him, right? That's the feminine being like, you know, like literally, like that's feminine just being like, I can't, like if that's the feminine being like, I am not, like that's a feminine being like, that is not my job. That's not my job. That's a feminine energy, just being like, again, almost seeing and feeling that to a certain extent, and being like, regardless of whether that's because she's feeling like the masculine energy's fear or anxiety in communicating, or the fact that that's an energy that's like has such an inability to communicate in the tangible space that their like energetic center reaches out to the feminine. The feminine's like, it doesn't matter if they can't find a way to bring it into the tangible, it only exists in the potential. And that's a feminine being like that's the thing that's frustrating. It's like, that's the beauty though, but feminine not coming into a reactivity space, coming into an acceptance space. Like that's the feminine almost being like, again, I'm not here to do your homework, right? Feminine's like, I will do plenty of homework with the energy that like wants to do homework with me. But that's a feminine being like, it's not my job to do your homework if you don't want to do that homework. If you don't want to do that assignment, like feminine's like, I'm not doing it for you. I'm not going to make you do it, right? That's a feminine just accepting it to a certain extent. While for masculine, again, you may be in a moment right now that, again, and I need to stress this, masculine energy, if you're in that modality of feeling that energetic overwhelm in relationality to how you're feeling something and how you're experiencing and what you're communicating, you know, let that be that moment that amplifies your path work going forward. Because we see even now, that could be that expression point that feels very energetically overwhelming to a certain extent. But again, that modality of almost looking towards the feminine in this modality, like almost again, if this is either a past version of feminine that you feel like you're now prioritizing from the past, or this is a manifestation of feminine that you have kind of embodied or you're manifesting within the self that you're hoping to find. In either way, you can match that energy by becoming your highest version of self in relationality to how you choose to communicate. And one of the things that we see here is that that's energy that has worked on being able to communicate through an energetic overwhelm, right? Like that's a lot of that work we see. And that's that moment that we see even now. Masculine, that shouldn't be a moment that you feel like you need to energetically force yourself to inhabit, but making sure that if you're feeling that energetic overwhelm, you don't let that move you into unhealthy coping mechanisms or bad modalities of thought. Being able, in a way, to energetically channel that in a place that kind of takes that like overwhelm and puts it into a place that feels like it is positive and productive and moves you closer towards that modality. Like that's the thing that's really interesting about the masculine energy. Masculine energy, I feel like there's all these like ropes and hurdles and like gauntlets that you create. But the truth is, all the feminine is seeking from you is honest, vulnerable communication. So we see even now, it's almost that moment that the masculine's like, I will do anything. I will create anything. But the articulating on the authenticity, if there's that moment that you're saying, I will do anything, and the feminine energy is like, just tell me how you feel and be authentic about how you feel. Masculine's like, but that, right? Like that's that moment that we see even now, that this is masculine energy that's almost, again, coming into connection with feminine and being like, that's all they want. And that's the hardest energetic thing to do. So even now, like that ability to recognize that, that's what's helping masculine energy come into that deeper sense of healing, because it's coming into that heart of vulnerability and asking yourself, why is that a bridge too far? Why is that a bridge too far? Because that's where the healing begins. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our High Priestess energy and our Judgment card. Continuing to get clarity on these, we've got here our Page of Swords in its reversal, right? This is literally like that high conversation between masculine and feminine, even now. Right? And if this is feminine energy that's in separation, that feels like they're having that like energetic conversation with masculine and being like, if I energetically feel you, but you don't feel the confidence of connecting, like that's the feminine energy almost looking at the masculine saying, it's not my job to energetically save you. Right? That's the feminine energy, again, feeling the weight and almost feeling that sense of, again, the feminine energy moving into that higher version of self and saying to themselves, I need the masculine energy to be able to face their fears. Only a masculine energy that can face their energetic fears can protect me from the masculine's own energetic fears, because that's what we do when we're able to energetically face our fears. We are protecting those around us from the things that within us that we need to navigate. So we see even now that for a lot of the feminine energy in separation right now, there's that moment that feels a little bit like that sad but true moment, in terms of feeling some kind of energetic connection with a masculine, but almost feeling like, again, that's that moment that the feminine is almost looking and feeling that question mark and being like, either they don't want to or they're too afraid to. And feminine is almost saying to themselves, in both things, it doesn't matter which one it is. It doesn't matter if masculine energy in that moment doesn't want to. They don't have the ability to move towards the feminine, or if they're too afraid to. Feminine says, it's all the same. It all comes out in the wash the same. It's all the same. So feminine just, again, is reaffirming their own energetic commitment in that way, because that's the feminine saying, sad but true. And that is where a lot of the feminine's healing is coming in. While for masculine energy right now, recognizing and identifying and even feeling potentially in separation and saying, they're probably wondering, either they think I don't want them or I'm too afraid to approach them. And that's the masculine energy that's basically saying, I need to lead forward towards feminine with energetic confidence, because my own ability to navigate forward through my own fears, whether those are fears of energetic commitment or whether those are fears that are coming from the heart of building into the heart of intimacy, which, again, if you haven't picked up on it, those are the same fear. That's a masculine saying, my ability to conquer my own fears is how I am able to truly build a connection with feminine. But that's not something about putting a false sense of self up. That's not pretending that I'm energetically confident. That's not creating a mask. Remember, a lot of the masculine energy in separation literally went through this whole process of not wanting to put a mask up. This is masculine saying, I need to become comfortable with being authentic about my feelings. I need to learn how to become vulnerable enough to express what I'm energetically feeling, because that is ultimately all the feminine is really asking from me. And we see even now that that is the masculine energy saying, as long as I can move towards feminine and be authentic about my path, my intentions, and my purpose, that is the biggest hurdle to cross. But masculine's almost saying, I need to recognize and do that, because that is what will lead me to her. Bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union right now, that ability of seeing one's vulnerabilities, these are energies that are discovering each other's vulnerabilities, their weaknesses, their fears, are these energies like leaning into those moments? Are they poking those energetic buttons? No, these are energies that are moving towards them with a sense of care and conciliation, saying like, I'm going to take these and protect them like they're my own, right? Because those vulnerabilities are like the energetic gifts we give to one another. And that's that moment that we almost say to one another, I will protect this at all costs, because that's that acknowledgement point that typically the way that a trigger is created is when someone took a moment that was deeply vulnerable and said, I don't value this. Let me show you how little I value this. Like that moment that we take something that is precious and we effectively let something get harmed. That's even now we see that these moments, like this almost feels like a moment of building that energetic trust and feeling that affirmation of saying and recognizing and saying like someone energetically hurt you here. And what are those energies doing? They're navigating it with sensitivity, but also affirming to themselves and saying, I'm going to show you that you have nothing to energetically fear. While for masculine and feminine energy, that's why the energy right now, that is the opposite. That's like trying to open that palm, because these are moments of an energy that is that built enough trust between one another that you can address those sensitivities. You can navigate them. You can almost touch them, because that's that moment of looking at something and almost saying like, can I see that? I can't heal it unless I see it. So let's look at it. Let's face it, because there's something here that needs to be observed, even if it's painful to look at, because that's what allows for that moment of looking at something and saying, is this something that feels like it's energetically productive? Or is this something that you're holding on to that may be causing you energetic pain? You can't address that until you look at it. So we see even now, these are energies in the divine union having those difficult conversations around sensitive subjects. Continuing to get clarification between our Judgment card in combination with our Six of Swords in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with that Justice card in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy in the divine union frequency. It's hard. These are the problem with talking around subjects like this is when you recognize and identify that something is energetically triggering. You almost need to go into them specifically saying, I recognize that I might have a reactivity point to this conversation, right? These are like literally like you're walking into the space or place that you know that your reactivity place is like amplified. So this is very, very hard energetic work, because it's almost like moving towards someone at a moment of them basically saying like, my reactivity on this, I've already told you that I might have like some kind of like deep energetic reaction. So we see even now, that's that moment of feeling the energetic imbalance as you're having a conversation like that, or you're doing that work, but also observing that every step of the way, like even that sense of mindfulness is what is allowing for that point of energetic breakthrough, because that's that moment of like almost accepting the circumstances as they are as you move towards something that almost feels like it gets more discordant as you get closer to it. But that's that moment of someone saying like, it's okay, continue forward, even if this is hard. Because that's that moment of someone saying like, you know, I understand and recognize that my reactivity point on something may be energetically amplified in a way that I want to kind of build that energetic sensitivity so that I'm not as energetically triggered around circumstances or situations, right? So we see even now, a lot of this is that ability now that a lot of the energy in the divine union frequency is having in exploring some of those abandonment wounds to try to build that sense of losing the energetic sensitivity on something, right? And that's something that can only be done with that moment of being able to move towards something and address it in a sensitive way. But again, that is how you build that sense of healing, right? Masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union. We see that for a lot of the energy coming into divine union right now, this expression, this modality, you're not necessarily ready to do that. Do not do, what I'm describing is not the energy coming into divine union right now, because this is that moment that you're building that energetic trust. And what is happening in that moment of building energetic trust is you're seeing, you're recognizing, you're identifying those moments that someone is feeling like they're carrying an overwrought reactivity point to something because something energetically like occurred there. That's like where someone is holding some kind of trauma. So what we see to a certain extent is that for a lot of the energy that is coming into divine union, this is not a touchy area. This is not a, let's touch that area moment. This is a moment that allows for that sense of saying, I will move very carefully and protecting that at all costs, because that is that moment that we build trust by saying, I see where you're vulnerable, and I will show you that I will not touch you there. I will not harm you there. I will protect that as though it was within my own self. While for masculine and feminine energy that is in separation right now, this observational point, this is the carryover from past experiences that is amplifying the ability to move forward, holding an energetic wound, but being able to identify and to utilize it in a way that feels like it is energetically serving in a positive direction. For feminine energy, it's almost looking back at a time period in time and saying, that was the moment. That was the energetic moment. That was the moment that my ability to be intimate with someone, my ability to trust someone, that moment that I felt like I gave them something vulnerable and I saw them not hold it in that level and degree of preciousness. That modality, that's the feminine saying, that is how I can move forward without being bitter, but also without letting go, because that's that moment of feminine being able to not carry the bitterness with them, but almost saying that is the energetic lesson. That is me taking back when I understand I need to, because that's that moment of me seeing and recognizing the energetic lesson that will help me as I proceed forward from this point. While for masculine energy, this is that moment that, again, your own ability of potentially having the same exact experience, looking back, recalling, remembering that same energetic moment, and almost reaffirming to yourself and saying, that is where I lost them. That was that moment. That was the moment everything changed. That was where I didn't prioritize something. That was the moment that the thing that I cherished, I did not cherish. That moment of identifying, that is also the energetic lesson that you're taking, though it may feel like it's not one that feels like a harm that was done towards you, but more, again, it's either on both sides right now. That's either the harm that was done towards or the harm that you did. But for the masculine right now, there's something deeper here, because this is some masculine energy going even further back to see how the abandonment wound was formed that created that sense of doing something that was harmful in a moment that they should have done something that pulled someone closer. This is masculine doing some like deep energetic unpacking and saying, why did I react that way? Why did I energetically do that? I knew in that moment I was doing something that was breaking something, but I couldn't stop myself. And this is masculine almost going further back and saying, when did I start doing that? When did that begin? So some deep energetic healing that's happening right now in relationality to both masculine and feminine. Though for masculine energy, it's feeling like a lot more of these, like I'm seeing here a lot more like going back to like childhood memories, to where like someone, where you first felt like you had to like protect yourself or protect your own emotions in a way. Like this is a masculine almost trying to get back to the source of when that first started. Bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Six of Wands in combination with our King of Cups in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. This is all about finding that blockage today. We got our Death card in its reversal. Let's go figure out where the blockage is. Bum, bum, bum. Masculine energy in separation right now. Like this is really like, this is some deep diving for masculine, trying to go back to the source here. Like literally, I see masculine energy almost looking and saying, no, I started doing something before that. When was it? When did it start? When did it start? No, further back. No, further back. No, further back. No, before that. Oh, there it is. Like trying, like really, oh wait, I learned. And then almost some of the masculine, I need to say this, some of the masculine energy doing this being like, I learned it from someone. I learned it from someone. Oh, did I learn it from a masculine? Did I start doing this because a masculine was doing it to me and I thought that that was the way we were supposed to be? There it is. Some of the masculine energy feeling that frustration point, because I'm seeing here that some of the masculine energy doing this work is almost saying to themselves, I didn't receive this. I learned this from someone. So we see even now that a lot of masculine energy recognize and seeing this. This is masculine energy finding some ancestral wound stuff here. Like really going back and being like, oh, I see it now. right? Working on that moment, seeing me like, it's not that I like, this is something that was given to me. Like, that's like that moment of identifying. That is a lot of the masculine coming back and starting to heal that deeper masculine wound to a certain extent. While for feminine energy in separation, this is the feminine energy acknowledging and almost seeing the masculine being like, I know they were probably like, this is like energetically how they were raised to a certain extent. This is almost feminine energy being like, I understand. Like, this is feminine almost looking towards masculine separation, being like, oh no, I understand completely all of the context through which someone may be in a place that they're energetically wounded. The problem with feminine, again, is feminine almost saying to themselves in separation, oh no, I can understand beyond a shadow of a doubt exactly why a masculine energy is the way that they energetically are. But the feminine's almost saying, it still doesn't energetically change something. This is the feminine saying, I can understand beyond the fiber of my being exactly why someone is energetically like the way that they are. But unless that person comes into that space of recognizing and identifying it for themselves, I cannot implement the energetic change that is required, because that is that moment of the feminine saying, it is outside of my own energetic self. And that's, again, the feminine energy saying, sending that masculine energy, being like, I hope you heal. That's what we mean when feminine goes, I hope you heal. Because that's the feminine saying, I understand and recognize exactly where, like, feminine's like, I know where the healing needs to occur. Feminine's like, I can't reach it. I cannot reach in there. I can't go in there and change that. There's only one person in the all of existence, in all of space and time, that can reach in there and change that. One person, and it's the self. And that's the feminine saying, that's the feminine immediately healing that, because that's a feminine saying, it feels bittersweet, because feminine feels that abandonment wound and feeling the sense of having to accept that, not wanting to feel like they're energetically abandoning the masculine, but almost saying to the feminine, feminine's almost saying, I'm not abandoning the masculine. I am releasing them to be able for them to energetically heal themselves, because that's the feminine saying, I need the masculine to be able to heal this in order for us to move together in a healing vibration. While for masculine and feminine coming into divine union, this is the feminine energy that is in a modality with a masculine that is not energetically perfect. Look at this. This is not masculine energy energetically perfect. But what happens when the masculine energy starts to feel that energetic overwhelm? Is this a masculine that subjects others to the emotional overwhelm? No. This is a masculine that's learning how to stop the emotional overwhelm. Just saying, cutting it off when it happens, feeling it, and articulating on it, finding something else to do, finding a way to energetically process. But again, feminine energy, even in these moments, it's not that there aren't points that feel like they're disruptive. It's feminine feels energetically safe, because they know that even when masculine is feeling energetically overwhelmed, masculine isn't going to react into it. Masculine is always going to protect the feminine energy from their own energetic reactivity. And that for feminine is, again, looking towards masculine saying, you've done this work. You make things energetically easy. It's not because you don't feel anything. It's because you are able to process the way that you energetically feel. While for masculine energy, feminine's own ability to articulate and identify the source, right? Not just coming into that point of reacting and not being able to say so, but being able to articulate immediately if there's something that the masculine has done. Masculine, again, says to the feminine, I appreciate you because you make something energetically easy. I don't accidentally overstep and then I don't know about it, or I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. You're very quick to be able to tell me if I'm doing something that needs accommodation or adjustment. And there's that moment that allows for that adaptability. So again, both of these energies appreciating that in the self. While for the energy right now in the heart of the divine union, this modality, this ability, this is a moment that feels like the opposite, because this is a moment that we see that these energies are confronting spaces and places that feel like they're energetically sensitive. They're leaning into them to a certain extent to say, we want to address this. We want to make sure, like, we want to go into these spaces, because if there's something here that you've been carrying that is either blocking you from becoming your highest version of self or blocking the ability to move towards a manifestation goal, these are the energies saying to one another, let's address them. Let's get to the heart of it. Let's tackle it. because that's that moment of saying, let's not carry something if it's not serving us. Like that's that moment that almost feels like that energetic unpacking to make things lighter and easier as you proceed forward. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now. King of Cups in its reversal in combination with our Page of Swords. A lot of this processing right now for masculine energy. Make sure you're grounding through a lot of this right now, because I can see even now there could be some feelings of energetic overwhelm, particularly with the masculine. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now. What happens energetically when we have these moments that we let ourselves just energetically feel the things that we feel without coming into a state of reactivity over them, right? That's that moment that we don't necessarily energetically self-sabotage, or we don't move against or oppositional to what we effectively identify like we want and desire. So we see even now, like this is where we see that these energies are assisting one another through these processes. For masculine in the divine union right now, the reason that the masculine energy values the energy of the divine union is it doesn't require the masculine to be energetically strong. I just told you, the divine union isn't a space where masculine has to pretend that they don't have feelings. Masculine can experience and feel all the feelings in the world, so long as the masculine is always doing that effort and work in not subjecting the counterpart to that emotions, not letting the energy of the emotions become a weapon, but almost letting them build a bridge. So we see even now that this is a lot of masculine energy that's doing a lot of that hard work of learning how to do these processes. And even now, we see that for both masculine and feminine energy, the ability to like meet someone and where you find them right now, that has a lot to do with some of that energetic overwhelm, because we see that for the energy in the divine union right now, that ability of just being able to authentically express what you feel, like that is that moment that always leaves for that space of positivity and energetic compassion, because that is the heart of intimacy, that energetic emotionality, that energetic honesty through which all things are possible. So even now there's that moment of energetic overwhelm that is allowing for the breakthroughs of new opportunities and new possibilities, because that's that moment that allows, like that's that moment that like you move away from the sad part and you start looking at the positives. You start looking at the thing that feels like it's energetically productive, both masculine and feminine energy in the heart of the divine union frequency, and being able to facilitate to see that clear mirror, as it were. That's also what is allowing energetically these energies to navigate forward in a way that even when something is energetically difficult, it is always energetically productive. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into the divine union frequency right now, that isn't that moment of touching that sensitivity point and working through those emotionally overwhelming situations or circumstances. That is that moment of being energetically mindful, of stepping back. And even now we see that the only hurdle is the fact that for feminine, there's that desire and need to almost want to discuss these things. This is feminine almost like wanting, if there's like a trigger that's hit, feminine's like, let's talk about it. I love talking about this. I want to talk about it. While for masculine, this could be a masculine saying, I'm not energetically ready. This is not the time that I can. But both of these energies being mindful of what the other needs and almost leading with that and saying, what do you need right now? Is this an area that you would like to talk about this, or is this an area that you would just rather not address? These energies being conscientious of the difference between what they might want versus what the other needs is what's building the tie that binds into the divine union frequency. While for the energy right now in separation, a lot of energetic closure coming to the forefront. And for feminine, this could have to do with a lot of either present or past connections with masculine. Because feminine energy, if in separation, is either feeling that moment of a masculine energy from the past that was either had not done enough energetic healing, that had a lot of strong emotions to the feminine, but didn't build a bridge with them, like utilize them as a weapon. Because when we're not able to navigate our emotions, the thing that we're supposed to build like those moments of intimacy, the places that we should feel that emotion that pulls us closer, those are those moments that like masculine will push us away. And that's why feminine has to be energetically mindful, because feminine's almost recognizing and saying to themselves, I understand that there are masculine energies that can feel so strongly, that their emotions are so big that they don't feel like they have control, and they can, they can push away instead of a moment of bringing closer because they haven't navigated the abandonment wound. Well, and I can also understand that there's masculine energy that may have all the feelings in the world for me, but they're too afraid of energetic commitment. They don't want to feel bound to a person. They don't see divine union as a place ripe with opportunity. They see it as an energetic limitation. And this is the feminine energy reaffirming their own energetic standards and saying, I recognize and identify that, a lot of the energy from the past, they might not have intentionally tried to hurt the feminine, but those frequencies inadvertently, with the focus on the self, can potentially not even see the harm that they're doing. And that's the feminine almost coming into that point of energetic acceptance around some of those, that again is making it easier for the feminine to proceed forward, because it's almost that moment of the feminine saying, even if their intention wasn't to do so, it's still something that the feminine saying, I can, it's that moment of saying forgiven but not forgotten, right? Like that's what we see that a lot of the feminine energy is navigating. That's helping them feel that sense of energetic support, because that's almost feminine saying, I see it now, I can recognize it, and I have to be mindful of it, right? While for masculine energy in separation right now, this is why I'm going to say again, now is not, if you're going through these moments that you're looking back at the past version of self and you feel like you've got a lot of energetic notes, if you're feeling that frustration of looking at the past version of self that was not as in control or did not have the ability to observe the emotions as opposed to reacting from them, or those moments that you fear your own fear of commitment or your own fear of your own path, like prevented you from moving towards what you desire, I need to say again, welcome to the present where everything is possible, right? Even now we see that a lot of the masculine energy, allowing that moment to channel that through, and just as the feminine's not carrying forth bitterness, but letting that be a moment of activation, seeing those moments and being like, that was the moment it happened. That was the moment I should have done better. That is like, now it's like almost looking at the past and letting those moments serve as those energetic lessons, because they're amplifying your own commitment to doing better as you proceed forward, which you're either utilizing to be able to build that energetic bridge with past connections, to be able to come into that place of healing, saying, I can tell you exactly the moments. I know them too. I'll tell you exactly what I did wrong because I can see it myself. Like that's masculine, either recognizing and realizing that that is the moment that they can bring forth the feminine to heal something, or that is masculine energy that is reaffirming and saying, I'm going to make sure I never do that again. I'm going to become the type of person that will never do that again, because I'm no longer that person, because I can look back and see that from that perspective. That's a masculine energy almost saying to themselves, I've already healed. If I'm seeing it in this way, I'm not seeing it the way I did before. I've already energetically healed. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now, between our Page of Swords in its reversal in combination with our Justice in its reversal. One card to clarify, please, clarification coming through right now with our Empress. Masculine and the feminine energy in separation. This is feminine energy, I told you. This is feminine energy building into a place. And this is what we want to see in separation, because we see that a lot of the feminine energy, a lot of that grief, channeling that grief into the highest version of self. Saying, I'm going to make all of that matter. I'm going to make all of that energetically matter. Does that mean that feminine's going back on like some path of like what, retribution? No. That doesn't make things matter. That just keeps feminine in a low energetic vibration. This is feminine energy going, I'm going to make those lessons matter. I'm going to move forward in a space or place where I'm going to be very mindful and say, I now can recognize and see the energy that isn't necessarily moving towards me with energetic confidence. And that's the feminine energy saying, whether that confidence is due to a masculine energy that either, again, is too afraid to open up from the heart of intimacy, or a masculine energy that doesn't energetically know what they want. Feminine says it's all the same. Feminine saying, I'm going to just, the solution is maintaining those energetic standards. And even now, that's the feminine saying that sense of energetic security and saying, I recognize and understand that the energy and frequency of masculine that's healed will be masculine energy that is coming towards me with that sense of energetic confidence, because that's the feminine saying, that is the masculine energy that has faced the greatest fear of all, fear of the self, right? That's a masculine that's conquered their own doubts and fears. And that's a feminine saying, I'm not going to miss that. The feminine's like, I can't miss that. It'll be very obvious when it's there. While for masculine energy right now, this is masculine energy right now, that again, if in separation, this is a commitment especially if there's path work right now that you're looking and you're saying, I wish I could have done better. I wish I could have come forward from a state of been more open and honest. Well, congratulations. Now's your opportunity. If that's a masculine saying, I wish I could have done better, this is that gift that the present provides, because that's a masculine that's either moving forward right now to be able to affirm that that is the case, to build that bridge with the emotions as opposed to building that wall. Or this is masculine energy that is building that sense of energetic confidence and manifesting that aspiration of the energy of the feminine that they aspire and desire within their own self, that they almost feel like they're leading towards as they move forward on their journey. Well, for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union right now, what we're effectively seeing is this is that moment that, again, these energy, like what's happening even now that could be energetically triggering, is for feminine energy that sees those moments of identifying to a masculine and being like, this is a little bit of a sensitive area for me. And a masculine that immediately steps back from that. That's the feminine almost immediately remembering the spaces or places that reminded them of a moment that didn't happen. Right? That's almost the moment that even as feminine feels that the trigger is being respected and being navigated well, it can almost feel just as difficult, because it's almost that moment of feeling the amplification of the memory of the place that first occurred that created that moment for the trigger to be there. So even now, that can be a moment that it feels a little energetically disorienting and bittersweet, because it's a moment of receiving what you should have received that reminds you of the place or space that caused the harm in the first place. While for masculine, the same, literally the same. Having these triggers that you're hitting right now, but having the sensitivity can feel a little jarring, because again, it creates that reactivity point. Feminine wants to talk about it. Masculine potentially is much more not wanting to talk about it. While for masculine and feminine energy in the heart of the divine union frequency, these are the energies that are forcing those hard conversations. These are the energies that are saying, I know that this is a sensitive subject, but still we must persevere. Because these are the energies that are trying to overcome blockages, particularly in the realms where there may be sensitivities that were carried forth into the heart of the divine union frequency that may feel like they're creating some energetic blockages. So the only way to navigate to a certain extent is almost that moment of being able to recognize and identify and say, let's have that hard conversation. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now, between our Death card in its reversal in combination with our Four of Cups in its reversal. Clarification coming through right now with our Ten of Swords in its reversal. But this is what's really beautiful, because again, the ability right now for the energy in the divine union frequency, working through those modalities, having that moment of being able to, again, what did we tell you? What did we see was happening for the energy coming into divine union frequency? That moment of observation, saying, I'm going to give some space here, but we should address this at another point. Right? That's that moment that we create in building trust, because that's that moment of almost seeing and saying, I want to show you that I'm sensitive enough to energetically protect this. We now see that a lot of the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency is now coming into that space of saying, I think that we've reached that moment that we can address those difficult places. We can put that concentration towards something. So we see even now that ability to navigate through those. But again, it's all about the energetic frequency that you're doing it in. It's not having that path work right now of discussing sensitive things. It doesn't feel like an energetic violation, because these energies are effectively or energetically saying to one another, we're doing this with that energetic feeling of recognizing and wanting to face those hurdles together, right? And that sense of that energetic sense of almost again, the energetic consent of navigating something that feels like it is typically a no zone area for other energy. That is in the heart of intimacy, because that's that moment of looking towards someone and saying, I trust you to have these conversations. I trust you to hit these sensitivity points, because that's that moment of looking at something and saying, does this necessarily need to be there? Or is this something that can be energetically overcome and cleared? While for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union, this is the energy. That is not where this energy is. Don't try to do that. Don't try to do that right now. If you're just coming into divine union, because you're doing this, this is the modality where, again, you're recognizing and you're realizing these sensitive areas, and you're showing the ability of building energetic trust with one another by almost saying to each other, almost like, again, not letting something energetically go, feeling something from the past reemerging, but almost saying, how do we want to handle it in the present? How should I handle this going forward? And perhaps that there's a time, like in the long term, that we can really unpack something, right? Like that's the gift of time. The gift of the energy coming into divine union is almost that moment of looking at something, looking at a circumstance or situation, and the gift of time that you have is almost feeling that expression and recognizing something that is not like an immediate situation, but something that you see that you can like address and build upon, given the expansiveness of the journey that you're going on together. Because this is the beauty of being on a long-term journey with someone, is you can build almost like those long-term energetic plans, if you will, in relationality to recognizing and identifying and saying, well, maybe not now. Maybe not now. Maybe now is not the time, but we should definitely readdress this or come back to this at some point when you're energetically ready. While for masculine and feminine in separation, this is how a lot of that energy in the past is being navigated right now. A lot of that retrograde energy. For feminine, a lot of it is a reaffirmation of your own energetic commitment, and a lot of that has to do with the feminine taking those heavy energetic boundaries, turning them into standards. Feels like taking something that feels like an energetic blockage and making it path. Like it's no longer a wall. When you take a boundary and you turn it into a standard, it becomes the energetic rule. So instead of it feeling like a no zone area for feminine, this is feminine saying, no, I'm going to use these to line the path that I'm going on, recognizing that those are that's showing me like what those standards shall be. While for masculine, and that feels like that moment that feels like that sense of empowerment as opposed to anxiety. While for masculine energy right now, in separation, that of affirmation, looking back, feeling like you energetically lost something, feeling your priorities shift. That is that moment, that those same moments that feminine is looking to right now to set their energetic standards. Masculine, you're looking at them and saying, I am intending to do better. And that's either something that you're utilizing right now in the state of accountability and observation to build those bridges back with feminine energy, or that reaffirmation on what you will do to build better with new manifestations of feminine going forward. Clarification between our Five of Cups in its reversal in combination with our Empress card. One card to clarify. Clarification coming through right now with Queen of Wands and its Swords in its reversal. And this is really important because what we're seeing here, I told you, feminine energy does not want to feel like they're confrontational or aggressive or assertive when building forth in new energetic connections with masculine. This is why we see that a lot of that feminine energy is trying to navigate and say, how do I carry this lesson without becoming bitter? This is how the feminine energy is learning how to carry the lesson forward without becoming bitter. Because this is feminine saying, if I become bitter, I'll be reactive. I'll be trepidatious when masculine comes towards me. I'll be like confrontational. Feminine's like, I don't want my boundaries to make me confrontational towards masculine if masculine's trying to come towards me with authenticity, because I might push away an energy that is just trying to be honest and open and expressive to me. This is feminine saying, I'm going to utilize these as standards. I'm going to know what my energetic value is. I'm going to connect to my highest version of self. I'm going to be noticing and mindful of whether the masculine energy is treating me in such a way that it feels like they can proceed forward. Always ready that if they show some expressiveness of not being mindful in that way, like yes, then I can pick up that reactivity sword. But that's the feminine energy taking that positive from the energetic negative of an experience where they may have gained some point of wisdom. While for masculine energy right now in separation, if these are modalities wherein you're looking back and you're feeling like there was, again, a feminine energy wherein you overstepped your own boundaries, wherein you're looking and you're seeing that there's something about the feminine energy having been very vulnerable, but instead of that being able to like cherish or protect that vulnerability, you built that energetic wall. You feel like you broke the energetic trust of the feminine. That is the masculine energy, recognizing and identifying how energetically difficult it is when you break the energetic trust of feminine, because that's the feminine energy that feels like they were giving you that access. They were giving you that opportunity. They were giving you that side of them that they don't typically show others. So we see even now that that's either the masculine energy, recognizing and identifying that, and building into that state of being able to amplify to the feminine and say, I understand that I broke your trust. I understand that I violated the gift of the vulnerability that you gave me through my energetic actions, and being able to articulate and almost tell the feminine like when that occurred. Or this is masculine energy that's recognizing and identifying the locationality of that, and saying and setting that, giving yourself that energetic commitment and saying, I am going to aspire to do better. So that way the feminine energy doesn't feel like they need to be protective, they need to hold their walls up to me, but rather recognizing that moment of building that sense of showing the feminine that I look towards them and I want to cultivate a relationship with them wherein they feel they can be their most authentic, robust version of self. While for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union right now, this is what the energy in the heart of the divine, coming into divine union is doing right now. This is the this is the feminine and masculine energy that, again, even when, what happened here? We see even now there may have been some triggers that were hit, and that's the feminine not feeling like they need to protect the trigger. That's the masculine almost immediately saying, I'm going to protect that. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I recognize now. And that's the feminine almost immediately seeing a masculine that's mindful of that, that puts that care in. That's the feminine immediately already feeling like, even before anything else happens, secure, because that's a masculine that immediately doesn't get defensive when the feminine says, that's like a bit of a touchy area for me. That's a masculine that is doing that work of being very energetically mindful of what the feminine needs, so the feminine feels secure. While for masculine, implementing those same tools, like that is the moment for masculine, you are also doing that hard energetic work, if you will, because that's that moment of seeing, again, a feminine that's almost saying to you, do you want to talk about what that trigger is? And masculine being like, no. And that's feminine saying, okay, I understand you might want to carry that different, but no, I'm available to do so. While for the energy right now that's in the heart of the divine union frequency, this is both of those energies challenging themselves, challenging their energetic commitment to one another, all for the sake of not standing in their own energetic way. For masculine and feminine, there's almost that moment of saying to one another in the heart of divine union frequency, if you see something that I can't see within my own self, that you're trying to bring forward to me, I recognize that you're not doing that because you're trying to energetically change me into something I'm not. I recognize you're doing that because your love for me is one that you aspire for me to become what you know I aspire to become. That I'm moving towards my highest version of self. And the ability of seeing someone who cherishes that and helps you by showing you parts of yourself that you yourself can't see. That is that moment that feels like that act of energetic compassion, because that's that moment that feels like, again, not trying to change someone, but trying to help someone become their highest version of self. And that's that moment that we see for both masculine and feminine, allows for that moment of doing hard things. And the hard things are even confronting parts of the self that are hard to acknowledge and come to terms with. Final card for today's spread, between our Ten of Swords in its reversal in combination with our Queen of Swords in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Three of Wands. Sometimes the only, can't go over it, can't go under it. Sometimes you just got to go through it. That's all we're seeing here today. Masculine and feminine, the beauty of this for the energy and the divine union frequency is, again, the ability to recognize what feels like isn't productive and being able to face that, to go through that difficult hurdle, to address what is hard to address if there's some kind of unhealthy pattern or cycle that's repeating here. That is what is energetically allowing for that point of breakthrough. And we see that for a lot of the energy in the heart of the divine union, doing that work, committing energetically to that process, that is what is allowing a lot of the energy to have new possibilities, right? It's only by doing the hard part, if you will, that you can allow for the new possibilities and opportunities to open up. So we see even now, like I told you, the ability to recognize the difference between a rut and a groove is all in whether it feels like it energetically serves you. So we see even now that a lot of that energy, recognizing and realizing that to a certain extent, that is the amplification point that is helping identify new opportunities, new possibilities. But it requires that sense of having to do that difficult energetic work without becoming overly triggered. Recognizing and identifying, you might have to have like a triggering conversation to do so, but that's that moment that, again, navigating through the trigger allows for the energetic breakthrough. While for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union right now, this is the energy of doing the opposite. This is the energy doing the opposite, navigating, seeing something, feeling the energetic trigger, almost saying to oneself, we're going to steer a little energetically clear of that. We're going to continue to build trust, but recognize and identify that that's not something that we're going to kind of leave there unattended. That's something that we might have to energetically return to, because that's that moment of looking at something and wanting to energetically unpack something in a bigger way to see if whatever that trigger is feels like it is like serving an energetic purpose, or does it feel like it's causing that ability of feeling the energetic harm, if you will. While is masculine and feminine energy in separation right now, this is the energy that's becoming extremely committed to their own path work through observations of the past. I told you, you can't be mean to the Mercury retrograde, because the ability to revisit the past is where we can take new insights. Because what we see here for masculine and feminine energy, looking back and almost saying to the feminine is looking back on things and saying, the only thing, if this is feminine looking back and saying, well, I would have made different changes, I would have made different accommodations, but overall the feminine saying, the only thing and this is even a feminine misstep to a certain extent, or feminine became reactive. Some of the feminine energy is almost energetically realizing and going back, like I said, going back and being like, well, honestly, like this is a feminine energy that's almost looking and saying, if I was reactive, it's because I was in a place I was deeply vulnerable and someone didn't like put me in that vulnerable. Like, again, this is feminine doing a lot of that vulnerability work and saying, like, again, feminine doesn't want to push this outside of the self, but feminine's coming into the acceptance point and saying, I allowed myself potentially to be vulnerable in a place that it wasn't necessarily safe for me to do so. Right? And even so, even here we see that that's a lot of feminine energy affirming and saying, if that's the energetic lesson I need to take, that is something that feels like it is functional, because feminine saying, I can utilize that to set the energetic standard going forward. I'm not going to hold the wound and say, I was hurt. This is feminine energy saying, I can do better. And that's a feminine saying, it's not my energetic fault that occurred, but that's a feminine energy saying, I'm going to make it matter. I'm going to find that energetic use that creates a positive out of the negative. While for masculine, if in separation, that same ability, that same recognition point, this may feel like there's a moment here that either, again, you're trying to build back into the state of a feminine energy coming to trust you again. And that all starts in the pathwork of being able to take accountability in the spaces and places wherein you yourself recognize that trust was broken, right? That's the difference between someone coming towards you and saying, I'm sorry you don't trust me, versus someone saying, I'm sorry you don't trust me, but I also recognize I know exactly where I broke your trust and I can do better. Like, that's the difference between what feels like a productive conversation versus the masculine affirming and understanding what that point was and utilizing it as a commitment to the self to do better as you go forward. Bottom of the deck on this reading today is, the Lovers in its reversal. Listen, I just gotta stress this. It's just gonna come across all of the frequencies right now. It's not the fact, do you see this? It's not the fact that everything is energetically perfect. It's not like you fall into an energetic commitment and go, oh goody, I found the perfect energetic commitment. No, these energies are going through the same exact thing across all the frequencies. It's how you navigate it. It's what you do with the same stuff that articulates and amplifies whether you're able to have those moments. Like, these same things, they can tear you apart. If you come into that state of being triggered and reactive and assaulting each other with your emotions and not letting yourself, like, building those walls instead of bridges, then yeah, this can be the type of energy that feels like it tears everything energetically asunder. If you let yourself become very, like, obsessed with your own wounds and focusing on the hurt instead of looking at having to do that hard work and channeling into a positive space. This can feel like things are falling apart. It's all about feeling like what you do in those moments that you feel like things are falling apart is the amplification of how well you are together. Because it's not the fact that anything is ever energetically perfect. It's your own ability to commit to how you effectively address and fix things that shows the amplification of building towards energetic union versus what falls apart in the midst of it. Circumstances and situations, they don't change people, they reveal. So even now we see that for the energy that puts that energetic commitment in, even through those hurdles, that can feel like there's that tie that binds. While for the moment or the energy that's that moment that feels like that point of energetic separation, that could be that moment that feels like you're drifting apart. It's all about how you navigate through that and where you set your intentions in relationality to what you're committing your energy to being able to work towards. That is our daily collective read for today. I'd like to thank you guys so much for being here and experiencing it. Just a reminder, if you would like to book a private reading with me, you can book one on my website, Strega.com. My private readings are done over video, and if you are a subscriber to my TikTok, you can take 10% off any of my services when you go to pay. Just mention your subscriber name at the point of payment. Please keep in mind, if you book a reading with me, it is a 2-step process. You have to book the reading, you have to pay for the reading. Please make sure you do both if you would like to have that reading. Most importantly, please remember that I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never DM you. I will never PM you. I will never slide into your inbox and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my website. So I encourage you to do it there. Also, just before we end today, I've got a couple of notifications I'd like to let you guys know about. First and foremost, we have begun our tarot classes. A huge thank you to everyone who joined us at last week's class. It was an absolute delight. Had such a wonderful time with everybody who took that class. If you missed our first class, I've got some great news for you. You haven't missed anything because we have recordings of that class that are available for all of the paid subscribers over on my Substack, Strega.substack.com. Your subscription will grant you access to every month's classes, as well as the course materials for all of the classes and the recordings of those classes. Also, you will have access to a one-on-one chat with me where you can ask any questions in relation to the classwork or your own tarot journey. And if you become a founding member to my Substack, not only do you get a full year's worth of those classes, but you also become a part, you also receive a free 1-hour mentorship reading with me, wherein we will explore where you are on your own journey with the tarot. And I will give you some insight on how to build upon the experiences that you've had thus far and what I feel like will be best to help you serve in the classes that you are taking. The thing I like about these classes is that I tried to create them so that they are useful for both the absolute novice, brand spanking new practitioner to the tarot versus a seasoned reader. It's got a bit of something for everyone. Thank you again to everybody who's joined us on this journey, and I hope that you'll also join us, Strega.substack.com. And just a reminder, even if you don't become a paid subscriber to my Substack, I would encourage you to follow me over there. We've got any kind of new notifications in relationality to programs or offerings will probably be posted there first. So I encourage you to join me there as well as on all the other socials. I hope you guys have an absolutely beautiful day. Thank you for being here and thank you for being a part of this collective reading. I hope you have a beautiful day and we will do this again